Hi folks, welcome to my channel. First of all, I'd like to thank the Carol Durant channel for this footage. Please forgive my archaic recording method. I'm 60 years old and not yet tech savvy. I'm going to be looking today at Ted Bundy's mother, Louise. This testimony was given on July 30th, 1979, about a week after his conviction in Florida for the murders of two sorority sisters, Levy and Margaret Bowman. What we're going to be watching today is from the penalty phase of this capital murder trial. For those of you who aren't aware, the Bundy, Florida murder trials were the first ever to be televised and started what we now know as to be Court TV. I wanted to give you a little bit of background info on Mrs. Bundy and her infamous son, the dynamics with it. She was unmarried and became pregnant with Ted when she was 22 and gave birth to him at a center for unwed mothers in Vermont. His father's true identity still remains a mystery. She initially left Ted at the center, but her father, Samuel Cowell, insisted that she bring the boy home to live with them, under the guise of telling Ted that she was his sister and that Samuel and his grandmother, Eleanor, were his parents. Rumor has it that Samuel, Louise's father, could be Ted's true father, but that's for another video. Now, I want you to notice Ted's nervousness before Louise speaks. I'm going to start playing this here. He's getting kind of nervous here. The Cowell family was violent. Samuel was very abusive to his wife Eleanor, and she suffered from bipolar disorder. She had shock treatment and everything like that. He also was abusive to Louise and Ted's Aunt Julia. However, Ted did speak highly of the father, or his grandfather, Samuel. Now, on one occasion, when Ted was only 3 years old, his Aunt Julia woke up to find knives strategically placed around her, with Ted just sitting there smiling at her. When Ted was 3 again, Louise took Ted and moved from Vermont to Washington and moved in with some friends due to the violence in the Cowell home. It was there when she met a cook named John Culpepper Bundy, and she married him, and then he adopted Ted, and that's where he got the name Ted Bundy. So let's go ahead and listen to some of this footage right now. She's going to be speaking here. Let's see. Maybe they're just bringing the jury in. Let me go ahead and get the sound going here.
You didn't make me look up all this law. I wouldn't have all this mess up here.
Okay, that's the Judge Coward. Okay, let me turn the sound off again here.
Well, his mother is here already. His father is arriving as well as his sister on a noon flight today.
Okay, let me turn that off real quick. Okay, just to let you know, also, Louise and John had 4 more children, and Ted still grew up not knowing that he was still his son, her son. He thought that he was the brother. So anyway, when Ted got a little bit older, there's some discrepancies. Either he found his birth certificate in an attic or something, or what happened, he when he left home when he was 18, he went to Vermont because he had some suspicions about his identity, and he found out that he was a bastard, in fact, and that he didn't know who his real father was. But anyway, what I'm going to do when we play this, you see, Louise mentions nothing of this, so, but now when we hear Louise's testimony, she was very firm on believing that Ted was innocent all the way up until the day before his execution, which was January 24th of 1989. So on January 23rd of 89, he finally calls her up and says, yes, Mother, I am guilty of, over 30 murders or whatever that he confessed to. So let's go ahead. She's about to speak right now.
Bundy.
And what is your address?
I live in Tacoma, Washington.
And do you have any children?
Now, settle down, Mother. We haven't lost a mother in a long time, so just don't be nervous, okay? Okay, go ahead.
Do you have any children?
Yes, I have 5 children.
And who is your oldest child?
My oldest child is Ted.
When was Ted born?
November 24th, 1946.
Could you tell us the ages of your other children?
Yes, our oldest daughter, Linda, is 27. Glenn is 25. Sandra is 23. And Richard is almost 18.
And where was Ted born?
In Burlington, Vermont.
Who raised Ted as an infant and as a young child?
I did.
And where were you living at that time?
Well, for the first couple of years of Ted's life, I lived in Philadelphia with my family.
Did there come a time when you moved to Tacoma, Washington?
Yes, I have very close relatives in Tacoma, and they thought it was a great place to live, so Ted and I moved there.
And what, if anything, happened in your life after you moved to Tacoma, Washington?
Well, I met a very wonderful man named John Bundy, and we were married a few months later.
And was Ted adopted by John Bundy?
Yes, he was.
How old was he when he was adopted?
He was 4 and a half.
I'm sorry, I wanted to stop here. I just wanted to remind you again that Louise said nothing at all about Ted going under the guise that Louise was his sister. Everything was looking like Louise was the mother. This is really creepy.
Could you describe for us Ted's early childhood and his upbringing? How did you raise Ted?
Well, we tried to be very conscientious parents, ones who did things with our children, gave them the best we could give them on a middle-class income. But mostly we wanted to give them lots of love.
What did your husband do?
My husband did and has been a cook at Madigan Army Hospital at Fort Lewis, Tacoma.
For how many years has he been a cook there?
Since 1952.
And have you worked outside the home?
Not until 7 years ago. I stayed home with the children until 7 years ago.
And where did Ted go to school?
Objection to relevancy, Judge. Well, look.
Ted went to school in Tacoma. All his schooling was in the city of Tacoma public schools.
And during that period of time, did you help Ted with his studies?
Oh, yes. I can remember many a night we stayed up way past midnight when he had a big exam coming up, and I'd try to help him with reading off questions I thought he might be getting, and he'd work it out.
Was Ted a conscientious student?
Very much so.
What year did Ted graduate from high school?
He graduated from Wilson High School in 1965.
And during high school, did Ted ever have any employment or jobs?
Yes, he worked as a newspaper delivery boy for the local paper. He did a lot of lawn cutting jobs. He and a friend had quite an enterprise there. And he worked as a cleanup person in one of the bowling alleys in the area.
Okay, also, the way she makes Ted look is like he's like the quote all-American boy, which if you've heard other accounts about Ted, that's not true. Ted had been arrested for shoplifting several times during his youth, and Louise knows about that as well. And Ted also had this huge resentment against John Culpepper Bundy, the man who, Louise married and who adopted Ted. He couldn't stand the man. There were constant fights among them. Also, Louise and John, they wanted to take him to church and all the time, and Ted would not go to church with them. So that's the story with that, even though Ted is saying in interviews, especially toward the end with Dr. Dobson, that, yeah, we went to church every Sunday and all that. Well, Ted did not go to church with the family.
And after high school, did Ted go to college?
Yes, he did.
And where did he start college?
He went went his first year at the University of Puget Sound, which is just 2 blocks from where we live.
Did he live at home that year?
Yes, he did.
That's also untrue, too. Ted did go to, I think it was Temple University or something for his first year. And there have been a couple of missing women, too. And I think Ted did confess to murdering those women. I can't remember who he confessed to. It might have been Bob Hagmeyer, or I think it was Bob Hagmeyer from the FBI. I'm pretty sure it was that. So.
And after he went to the University of Puget Sound, where did he attend school?
He then transferred to the University of Washington in Seattle.
And what did he study?
At that time, he was majoring in Asian studies.
Did he ever change his major again?
Oh, yes. He changed it to several times. Mainly, his interest was in the law, and so he was taking the courses he felt would be helpful in that respect.
Did Ted ever express a desire to go to law school?
Many times, ever since he was a small boy, really.
And where else did Ted go to college?
He had a special grant to study at Stanford one summer, and that was while he was still in Asian studies, in Chinese language. All of my family live in Philadelphia, so one semester he spent at Temple University in Philadelphia.
And why did he go to...
Okay, I apologize. I do stand corrected. I guess that was after the Puget Sound. I'm sorry about that.
Philadelphia, as you recall?
Partly because he wanted to visit with my family. His grandfather lives there, and he and his grandfather had been very close when Ted was little. But also because at that time, he was much interested in the plight of the inner city. And if there's ever an example of the plight of an inner city, it would be in Philadelphia. So he thought that would be an interesting place to
What
be.
did you say he studied in Philadelphia?
Where?
What
At Temple University.
During the time that Ted was in school, did he have jobs at the same time? Did he work?
Yes, it was really necessary.
I did want to interject something here, and this doesn't have to do with Louise here, but I read this in a couple of sources. When Ted went to Temple University, he actually took a theatrical class where he learned how to put on makeup, and he used this a lot in a lot of his ruses, because he was so good at altering his appearance. Like, he was good at parting his hair from one side to the other, and he was good at applying, different facial hair and just different ways that he would apply different things to his face, different makeups and stuff. And that was in order, of course, not to be as easily detected.
He worked as a busboy at the Seattle Yacht Club. He worked for a lawyer's or attorney's messenger service. He worked for the crisis clinic, manning telephones at night.
What was the crisis clinic?
Well, a crisis clinic is where people call in. who
That
have
fear says it all.
Urgent problems.
Mask slipping.
Need someone to talk to.
And when did Ted finish college?
He finished college in 1972. Graduated from the University of Washington.
And during this period of time, did he ever work in any political campaigns?
Yes, he did. He, off and on, ever since he was in high school, he had been interested in politics. But I think the biggest one was in 1968. At first, he was working for the Rockefeller campaign. Came here, in fact, to Miami, to the Republican National Convention. When Mr. Rockefeller didn't get the nomination, Ted went back home and worked for the election of the lieutenant governor in the state of Washington that year.
by the, what would be like the statewide Republican Committee in Washington State.
Yes, he was in, if I can get the date exact, I believe it was most of 1974. He was assistant to the chairman of the Central Committee.
And what else did Ted do as work during that period of time?
Well, let me see. He was always busy, always had a job. He worked for the Seattle Crime Commission, doing research work, I believe, for them. And he also worked for Governor Evans' campaign later.
And was Governor, well, he was elected governor of
Yes, he
Washington.
certainly was.
That was prior to your current governor, is that correct?
Yes, that was the 72 campaign.
Okay, I just want to say Ted didn't always had a job. Being a psychopath, he had what is called as like a parasitic lifestyle. This is another paradox of Ted Bundy. He hated women and he murdered them, but he also depended on women financially. So he used women, he manipulated women to give him money too. So he didn't always have a job, and he did. In other words, he didn't always financially support himself. So, Louise is pumping Ted up to be someone that he's not here.
And after Ted finished college, did he ever go to school after that?
Yes, he went to law school.
When did he enter law school?
He entered the University of Puget Sound Law School in the fall of '74.
And how long was he there?
The fall and the spring semesters.
And where did he transfer after that?
To the University of Utah Law School.
Okay, and when was the last time that he attended law school? Do you recall approximately what month, what year that would have been?
October. Oh boy. Get my years mixed up. He went for 1 year to University of Utah and started the second year but did not finish.
Could you describe the relationship that you have had with your son, Ted Bundy?
I wanted to know if you guys noticed the charm that she's putting on. Ted and she seem to have a lot of similar mannerisms in their facial expressions and the charm where they smile. But then you see that kind of smile wear off and there's kind of this real evil facial expression. Maybe it's just me, but I picked this up watching this a couple times.
Objection to relevancy. I'll let her in.
I've always had a very special relationship with all my children. We tried to treat them all equally. But Ted being the oldest, and you might say my pride and joy, our relationship was always very special. We talked a lot together. And his brothers and sisters thought of him as just the top person in their lives, as we all do.
And even since the time that Ted has lived away from home, has he maintained good contact and a good relationship with you?
Oh yes, always. I have a lot of telephone bills to attest to that. He would call home if he could, if he didn't write. And we kept in very close touch, always.
What effect would it have on you if Ted were executed?
Objection. I was just saying.
Okay, like right there. Oh, I'm sorry. I lost the video. I'm sorry. I'm just going to go ahead and continue on. It basically the way it ends is they ask about the death penalty, and she said that her feelings on it, that she believes that that taking a life under any circumstances is wrong, and certainly in the eyes of God, and the state of Florida is not above the eyes of above God's law, and blah blah blah. So anyway, I'm really sorry that the video cut off right there. But what I wanted to mention is that Ted belongs to what they would call cluster B personality disorders, which would include antisocial personality disorders, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic, and histrionic. Ted, was diagnosed by many people as being a psychopath, which is under the umbrella of antisocial, and also narcissistic personality. These tend to run in families. I am not in any way, shape, or form in the mental health field, but I did, just looking at Louise and her expressions and the way she answers questions and the way she's covering up the story and sugarcoating it and everything, seem to exhibit a form of some kind of personality disorder, and that's what I would think. But anyway, that's all I pretty much have on this. So if you'd like to leave a comment, go ahead, please. And like I said, I really apologize for the execution of no pun intended, but the manner of the way this was recording. And I do plan on getting some better recording equipment. So anyway, thank you very, very much for listening. Goodbye.